Grace, peace, and welcome to Podcast of the Wills, a podcast that treats Star Wars like a sacred text. My name is Nick Milkey, and it's Sunday night. This is like the 7th week in a row that I've done a live stream. I feel like this is a new record. I'm trying to be more consistent as a grown-up, and why not start with a Star Wars podcast? I hope everybody that is watching live is doing well tonight. I hope you're going to talk to us in the chat. I have two amazing guests. I'm super excited to bring them on. I don't really have any news. I've said for the last probably every week that we've done this, let's do Star Wars news. And like there's been news, and sometimes we've already beat that horse into the ground by the time we get to Sunday night. And some of those people don't need our attention, so I don't want to talk about them anymore. Anyhow, but I do want to give in the place of news, I want to give a shout out tonight to my friend Jerry Cable. Today is Jerry's birthday. You may know Jerry as the Canon Junkie on Twitter. He's one half of the Bombad cast, and he's one of my favorite people on the internet. He was a guest on this show, actually the second week that we did the live stream, but it's Jerry's birthday, and I know he moved last week. He's got a lot going on, so shout out to my man Jerry. I hope you're having a great night wherever you are. Maybe you'll pop in the live chat later. So happy birthday to Jerry. We're going to get right to my guests tonight. I have listened to their podcast for not from the very beginning, but I've listened to their show for a good while now. We were talking before we went live about how weird it is to listen to people on a podcast talk about their life. And then if you happen to run across them, you don't really know them, but like, you know, stuff about their life anyhow, like, oh, they got a new job, or they like to do this on the weekend, or whatever it is. But my guests tonight are Alyce and Laura from the ForceToast podcast. Alyce and Laura met, if I'm getting this right or wrong, they can correct me when we get them in here in just a second. They actually met doing Star Wars trivia, which is awesome. They are both trivia forces to be reckoned with. I actually messaged Laura like 2 Decembers ago because I went to one of our local bars was doing Star Wars trivia. I went with a buddy of mine. It was just the two of us. He actually will tell you he didn't do anything. He just hung out and drank beer while I actually won the trivia round. And so I texted her on Twitter. I was bragging. I was like, "Ooh, I won trivia, Star Wars, whatever." I wouldn't even pretend to compete in the trivia that that Alyce and Laura Kelly both do. They are doing Schmodown. They're doing this big time stuff. And when I listen, I actually watched the match that Laura did the other, I guess last week maybe. And I wasn't close. Like there was no reason to pretend that I know all that stuff. But they met over trivia. They started a podcast. And one of the things I love about their podcast is, one, it's called ForceToast, a Star Wars happy hour. So drinks are involved. I'm a big fan of drinks. That's a big part of what I like to do, and we're going to do here in a minute. But also, it's two ladies talking Star Wars. And as somebody who's been a Star Wars fan literally my entire life, there hasn't always been enough women in Star Wars. We joke all the time that for the first 3 movies, basically Princess Leia was the only woman in the galaxy. That has changed. There are more and more women coming into Star Wars. There's more strong women in Star Wars. As a father of 4 girls and who live also with my wife and our dog, who is a female, I live in a house with 6 women. I appreciate strong women, and I appreciate these 2 ladies who have an awesome podcast. So I'm going to bring Alyce and Laura in and talk to them and bring them as a part of the show tonight. Ladies, how are y'all?
Hi, doing well. Happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday. I'm so glad y'all are here. I'm going to do lots of y'alls tonight because I live in the South, and that's what we do here. We've got lots of people in the chat already. I see Michael, I see Matthew, I see JD. Glad everybody's hanging out in the chat with us. But ladies, thank you for being here on a Sunday night. I really appreciate it. I know that y'all have work tomorrow. I know Laura is coming off a big trivia showdown. Was it last Friday or last week?
It was last Friday. At this point, it feels like it was like a month ago, but it was, yeah, it was the 19th. We were live that night, and it's on YouTube now. So if you missed the live pay-per-view, yeah, you can find it on the SCN network on YouTube.
That's awesome. I watched it the other day. I felt like it was supposed to be research for getting y'all on, but really I just wanted to see how it went and if I stood a chance at those questions, and I didn't. So
you just wanted to play along.
I did. I tried to play along and realized I was way out of my league. But it was cool, and it was neat to see that. You actually didn't miss any questions, if I'm not mistaken. You defeated Molly Damon. I know that there's a little bit of a quest. There's a storyline here that you're going after Alex again, I think. And so it's fun to watch that. But I love that y'all's story started with Star Wars trivia, because I love trivia in general. I watch Jeopardy. We watch it most every night when we eat supper, like old people. one of my life goals is to be on Jeopardy. I take the test every time it comes around or every time you can. But I love that that's where your story started. Y'all met doing trivia at a bar. I think the trivia DJ or master, whoever, was like, y'all need to meet, y'all need to hang out. And it may be on your website, but it basically says, that first night you shut the bar down, talking, hanging out, drinking beer. And what a great way to meet. Tell me, kind of briefly actually, no. I'm sorry. I've gotten out of order here. We can't have a conversation if we don't have a drink. And I got so excited talking about trivia that I almost went past maybe the most important part of the evening besides having y'all here. I have said for a while that I'm trying to brand myself as the Stanley Tucci of Star Wars podcasts. If y'all have seen his Instagram videos where he's making drinks from his perfectly appointed home in a little blazer, being Stanley Tucci, I thought I can do that, but for Star Wars podcasts. So we've started making drinks every week and naming them after our guests. I say we, it's just me. I get a little too excited about, cocktails and drinks and whatnot. So we're going to make a drink tonight. I've got all my stuff right here. And if anybody wants to play along at home, they can. We'll put the recipe up later if you want to have one of these drinks. As always, I have my Return of the Jedi Burger King glass that has seen better days. I've got some ice already in it. So I'm going to and I'm not going to measure this because it's a big glass and sometimes you just pour your booze in. So I'm going to pour some bourbon in here. It's maybe 2 ounces. It's way more. That's fine. Bitters. We were talking about bitters beforehand. Nobody really knows what bitters are, but they're supposed to go in cocktails. So I have a bottle of bitters.
I know what
Laura
they
knows.
are.
Tell us, please.
They're meant to be the seaseaning in your cocktail. That's what bitters are, the purpose they're supposed to serve.
What are they made of?
I don't know.
Let's
Different
see.
things. If those are the Arangosta ones, they're probably orange. Though I know that there's like walnut bitters and stuff too. Like I tried to find those for a cocktail class that I did, and I couldn't find them. So all I have in this house.
These are the aromatic bitters.
Nice.
And the first ingredient is alcohol. So we're already ahead right there. Alcohol, water, sugar, gentian, which I don't know what that is, natural flavors, and caramel colors. And these are made in Mount Prospect, Illinois. So, so maybe close to you guys. So I've got my bitters. I've got my booze. I've got a little bit of simple syrup. I don't like too sweet, so just a dash. And then from this recipe I found, the cheapest champagne I could find right here.
Oh, Andre's the best. I love it.
And I'm judging the two of you right now.
We're going to top off. Well, as someone who doesn't drink champagne, I thought, what's cheap? Because the next one will just be bourbon in a glass. But we'll start out here.
That's fair. If you're not a champagne drinker, I get it.
That's right. So what I decided is I combined your names and I made LaurAlyce. That felt kind of Star Wars.
I like it.
I also added trivia because that's a key part of y'all's story. And then I put Stim because I didn't want to go with juice. Juice is kind of weird. We did Jerry juice for Jerry the first week. I thought about fuel, but that started to feel a little bit like Mountain Dew game fuel, something else. But I've been playing, because I'm late to everything, I've been playing Jedi Fallen Order lately. And he has the little Stim packs that he gets from BD1. So we have LaurAlyce Trivia Stim is what our drink is. So cheers to you, ladies. Thank you for coming on tonight.
I didn't have champagne, so I'm just topping mine with club soda. I did a lot of lemon juice in mine too. I thought it was really funny that you didn't Nick sent us the recipe ahead of time, but he didn't include quantities, and so I was just kind of guessing. But I think I did it like pretty much right, and I made extra because I gave some to my sister too. But yeah, nice. Cheers, you guys. Cheers to y'all. Yeah. Thank you again for being a part of the show.
I didn't have any of that, but I put my can of wine in a Saints koozie.
And that's appropriate too, because you've got to represent you've got to represent the South as well. Mm-hmm. Well, we are now back on track. Tell me just a little bit about y'all's Star Wars story. How you both, maybe we'll let Alyce go first. How did you come to Star Wars, and how did that, did you grow up with it? Did you come to it later? For where and how it got you to where you are now.
Oh boy. Yeah. So I've always just been into weirder stuff. And I was flipping through, back when you had to pay for the Disney Channel. Mm-hmm. the Ewok movies were on it, and I watched them because I'm like, oh, I'm a little girl, and that's a little girl too. Oh boy, that's exciting. I love this. And then I was flipping through TV channels at my grandmother's once, and I saw the Ewoks, and I was like, oh yes, the Ewoks. And it was Return of the Jedi, and I was like, oh, this is cool. I should watch all of it. And that was also around the time, or a few years later, was when they did the re-releases in theaters, and Taco Bell had the toys in the 90s. And then like my best friends in high school, we were just into everything. I mean, we were super into Lord of the Rings, super into Harry Potter, super into Star Wars. And yeah, just kind of went from there. So I've always really loved it. But there was a time where I was just so stressed and miserable because of one of my old jobs. And I just wanted something on in the background to kind of de-stress me. And I thought, okay, should I pick Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, or Harry Potter? And I picked Star Wars. And then I just started getting so into it. And I started listening to podcasts. I never really listened to them before. And I think this was 2017 maybe. And then I started getting really into the books and comics and just everything. And then eventually I got to a point and I was like, oh, bar trivia, that sounds fun. I think I could do it because I watch 2 movies a day. This will be great. And yeah, that's just kind of where I ended up. And I was going all over the city. Laura was doing the same thing. We didn't meet, but I saw her at a bar that we were at like the time before we met, because in the Facebook event, she was like, do we need to know Legends stuff for this? And I was like, that is going to be competition. What? Who is this person? And then I remember looking around the bar and I saw her and I was like, oh, that girl, man, I have to beat her.
That's right. Got your competitive fire going. I like that. I like
Good
that.
times.
No doubt. Well, I know, or I think I know, you can correct me certainly, Laura, from listening to your show, you came to Star Wars later. Is that correct? Like maybe in the last, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years, if that, I don't know. Tell us about that, because I feel like you've mentioned that before and that's always intrigued me as well.
Yeah, sure. So I am a fairly new Star Wars fan. So I saw The Phantom Menace in like 99 or 2000. Like I think I got one of those like dollar movie tickets the summer after it came out and went and saw it with some like friends and family. And I was just like, it just didn't connect with me at that point. But that was the first Star Wars movie that I ever saw. And then I was at like I'm pretty sure it was Thanksgiving when like one of the trailers for The Force Awakens premiered. So this would have been like November 2014. And I remember like football being on a lot of the day. I was probably with my family, with a bunch of people like doing a Thanksgiving sort of party back when we could gather with other people. And I remember like sort of like turning around because I like heard the trailer come on, and it was like that sort of weird tunnel vision where like all of a sudden like everything else in the room just like melted away. And it was just me and the TV, and what was happening in that trailer just like spoke to me. So I got really excited and I decided to like kind of sit down and be like, all right, this is like a pop culture like hole that I'm missing, like all of Star Wars. So I really need to sit down and finally watch these, which is what I did. Started with the original trilogy, then went back to the prequels to sort of prepare. And I think even leading up to The Force Awakens, I started to get into Star Wars Rebels. At that time it was airing, like it was the new Star Wars that I got to like watch along with the new fans or with the other fans that were watching it all for the first time. So I sort of like still identify that as my Star Wars. That's what I really connected with was that show. And yeah, meeting Alyce was it was really funny because yeah, we were doing the same thing where we just like were seeking out Star Wars trivias around the city. And yeah, eventually got to meet up and it was great.
That's awesome. And it's awesome that you live in a city big enough that there's like multiple Star Wars trivias to go and seek out and find. We had one here 2 Decembers ago and there hasn't been one since. So I'm not, I don't think there's one coming anytime soon, but that's fine. But 2 things that I think that I wanted to point out that stand out to me is one, and if anybody listens to your show, y'all do a bunch of stuff with the books. And I think that's fantastic. I love how into the books y'all are. In fact, I like to read. The problem is by the time I get to the end of my day and I have a chance where I maybe could read, I take the path of least resistance and I end up watching 30 Rock or The West Wing again for like the 100th time instead of like reading a book. I just like zone out, fall asleep, whatever. And so I've done the audiobook some, and I like doing that. I like actual book, either one is fine. I just don't commit enough time to it. And so when I listen to your show and y'all are talking about, this book came out or this book came out, like it kind of helps me be like, oh, I really do want to read that because I've heard y'all, review it, unpack it, get into it a little bit. And so I love that y'all do so much with the books, because for me, as an original trilogy kid, I grew up, and a key thing for me were those Legends books in the 90s, in the early 90s, the original Thrawn trilogy, the Jedi Academy trilogy, like all of those, like that was me in, junior high and high school reading those books, because we didn't know when we were going to get Star Wars again. We got the special editions, but that was the Star Wars I already had. So those books were a big deal. So I've always had a special affinity for Star Wars books. And so I love that that's such a, a focal point of your show. I think that's really neat. The other thing that I wanted to point out is, you've talked before, and you said it just now about Rebels and how, important Rebels was for you, even as a, self-identified original trilogy guy, as a 42-year-old. To me, Star Wars Rebels is some of the best Star Wars storytelling that exists. In fact, I think, and the hill that I like to die on, is it's the best of the Disney era Star Wars storytelling. I think it's that good. I think that the lore, the story about Kanan, the Jedi story, like that whole thing, to me is just, it's my favorite thing. Like it really is right up there in the list of things I love so much about Star Wars. And I wasn't prepared for that because it was a kid's show, and it, the first episode seemed a little dumb, but it didn't take long at all for me to be hooked. And now I've watched it multiple times, and it's just one of my favorite things. So I love that you connected, and that was kind of one of the big things that brought you, all the way into Star Wars, was that show.
Yeah, for sure. It's great. And I love that you think that it's like the best Star Wars that like Disney's made. I think most people would probably define that as The Mandalorian, which is fair. It's very good.
It's right there. It's close. Yeah. I mean, they're right there. 1A, 1B.
Yeah.
But for
and
what,
so many people thought that it was like a kid's show, and it's like, and it is in some ways, but Star Wars is for everyone. And that's what I think, like Rebels towards the end got really dark, it's a pretty dark story, especially the ending. So I haven't done much rewatching of it, because obviously the ending's like, it's pretty sad. So I hate to go back and relive that, but it's one of those things that I just kind of like, I like to look back on it, Sure. I'll probably rewatch it again someday when I'm not studying for trivia 24/7.
when you actually have time.
Yeah, exactly. But it's it is great Star Wars storytelling.
Well, and your other point is really good too, which is there's a way into Star Wars for everybody. For me, it's not Resistance. Like I've tried to watch that show and I haven't watched it. And I know y'all are in a similar boat. You've talked about that on your show before. Like it didn't click for me. But to be honest, Clone Wars didn't click for me, for the most part, until this most recent newer season came out. And part of that was because of how much that I fell in love with Ahsoka because of Rebels. Because Ahsoka at the beginning of Clone Wars didn't do it for me. And I say all the time, I use Clone Wars as like a reference book. Like when I'm watching something on Rebels and I need to know, I need to know more about Mortis, or I need to know more about the Darksaber, I went back to Clone Wars and watched that little segment that was about that. And then eventually at some point I've seen most of Clone Wars. But it doesn't have to be for me. And similarly, like we see in negative fandom, I don't have to be pissed about it either. I can just go, you know what? That's not for me. It's for somebody else. And I can move on.
You don't need to make it like your whole personality, your online presence doesn't need to be about. That's interesting. Okay.
Nope. Cool. Not my deal. Not my deal. I'd rather have fun, because you know what? Let's have drinks and have fun. We don't have to burn couches and tear shit down just because we don't like something. So I've been doing a list. Every time we've done this over the last 7 weeks, I thought, what's something fun? There's 1,000 Star Wars lists. Let's add one more to the pile. I don't know why, to be perfectly honest, that I picked top 7. I picked 7 and I've run with it every week. At one point I was like, well, maybe I'll change the numbers up, but it's a top 7. So what I threw out to you ladies, and you snapped it up pretty quick, I think Alyce maybe even a little faster than Laura did, was top 7 Obi-Wan Kenobi moments in Star Wars. And I will say too, and I'm not trying to kiss up, but y'all have one of the best intros to a podcast of all the different podcasts I listen to. It starts with Obi-Wan saying hello there, the song, the whole thing. Like, it's just great. It makes me happy every time I hear it. So y'all are dedicated Obi-Wan Kenobi guys. I know Alyce especially is. There's a whole Ewan McGregor thing that's connected to that, which nobody blames you. Nope. And the story that I don't think I've told on this podcast, I was going to talk about it with Pete. I was on with him a month or so ago from Around the Galaxy. Are y'all familiar with the movie Big Fish?
Yes.
That Ewan McGregor
I know what it is,
is
but
in.
I haven't seen it.
Okay, you really need to watch it. It's fantastic. It's Ewan McGregor. It's Jessica Lange. Oh gosh, who else? Anyhow, it's a great movie. And Ewan McGregor plays the younger version of this story. And basically the whole idea is all the legends you hear about, like your grandfather, and he did this when he was a kid, and he sold this to a bunch of gypsies, and he worked in a circus, and all this stuff. And it's the story of flashing back to him. Well, Ewan McGregor is in that movie. Well, that movie was filmed in Montgomery, Alabama. It's a Tim Burton movie. And I got to be an extra in that movie one day. And I was on set for the funeral scene, which is right at the end of the movie. The Ewan McGregor character is dead. So, and it was Albert Finney plays the old version of Ewan McGregor. And so Albert Finney had died. So Ewan McGregor's not in the scenes that I was in, but he was on set that day. And so I'm standing there, and he walked by and he said, "Hey" to me. He didn't say hello there. I probably would have pooped my pants, but he said, "Hey." And I was just like, and so I like to say I was in a movie with Ewan McGregor. And the best part of it is the scene that I'm in as an extra, it's just the back of my head walking away from the camera. So I could never prove that it's actually me, other than I know it is. So I just wanted to brag that I got to be in a movie with Ewan McGregor. So I don't know if y'all have gotten to do that, but
Alyce would have melted into a puddle.
Well,
yeah.
While he was here for the 6 or 7 months that they filmed the movie, his kids were here, and he enrolled them in one of the private schools locally here. And like, he would ride to the private school and like go pick them up himself. And all of these like Central Alabama private school moms were just hardcore, like swooning as Ewan came through the carpool line to pick up his kids. How sweet is that he went and picked his own kids up from school? Like, that's awesome. But all the moms here thought that was fantastic, and you can't really blame them.
Yeah, he gets to spend time with his kids that way. That's so cute.
It's totally legit. If I was in movies and had to do that, I would absolutely take my kids with me. Like, it's an adventure. They can do school with a tutor, whatever.
You get to go to school in Alabama.
Yeah, well, that may not be the best way to sell it, but we'll try and see what we can do. We're having a technical issue here. Y'all hang on one second.
Sure.
Okay.
Well, for the occasion,
and we're back.
Wore my
my AirPods died. That's super not helpful. So our top 7 Obi-Wan Kenobi moments, and both of the ladies gave me their list of their top 7. So I'm going to try to navigate putting these up on the screen, and we're going to go through them, and we're going to talk about them. And it was interesting to see these two lists kind of come in alongside of each other and see, what made the list, what showed up at number 1, number 2, different moments, were there repeats, all of that. So we're going to go alphabetical. And the first one that we have for Alyce at her number 7 is A New Hope. Hello there.
Hello there.
Classic.
It's our first intro to Obi-Wan.
I wondered why. I was sort of surprised that you included any non-Ewan McGregor options. I was surprised to see one at all, that there was one Alec Guinness included. I thought for sure it was just going to be all Ewan.
Yeah, but Obi-Wan wouldn't have been. I mean, he's still pretty effing awesome. But if we didn't know anything about him before Ewan, would he have been as awesome? Plus, there's a method to my madness.
Okay.
All right.
Well, that's good. I like that.
Yes.
All right. And so for Laura, for her number 7, and I think this is a great one, we have the Kenobi show announcement at D23.
Yeah, I kind of cheated with this one, but I was trying, because that was just such like an epic moment, and I remember it so clearly. And I remember going out to like a bar with my friends after that whole thing happened. I don't know if it was that same day or later that week, but I was just like, the Kenobi show, you guys, and they were like, what? Because they just don't care. But it was in the end, they're like then getting to like sit and record with Alyce that weekend, and we added some like extra stuff to our show because we were like just high on Obi-Wan. It was amazing. So it's really just overall for me the memory and everything associated with that announcement. It was just so exciting.
Well, and I think that really makes an important point, which is that's 50%, if not more, of Star Wars. Like, Star Wars for me are memories and connections to things growing up, playing Star Wars out in the yard, going to see Return of the Jedi in the back of my parents' station wagon at a drive-in movie theater in 1983. Like, that's a memory and that's a moment. And no, Return of the Jedi is not my favorite movie, but like, I have an affinity for it because of those reasons and that connection. So it's perfectly legit that would be a connection for you with something like this. I've talked before on here about going to Celebration in Orlando in 2017. We rode down just for the day. A buddy of mine and I did a little, 48-hour road trip. We were there just for the one day. But one of the most powerful things to me the day we were there was the day that Billie Lourd came out on stage, and it was after Carrie Fisher had died. And she came out and she recited that monologue from Star Wars, General Kenobi, long ago you served my father in the Clone War, and she came out and just did that whole thing from the stage as like a tribute to her mom. And of course, everybody in the room's like bawling, losing their minds, but it was so cool. And so every time I see Connix in a movie, I'm like, she's awesome. Like, she loves her mom. And like, that's a big deal to me, but it was an emotion connected to a moment. Like you're saying, seeing that announcement, going out with your friends. And to me, that's what Star Wars is at its core. It's a connection. It's something that makes you feel good. It doesn't make you angry. It makes you feel good when you're doing it right.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, this one made me laugh. This is Alyce's number 6. As we keep our list moving. Alyce said, General Beard caressing.
What's more Kenobi than that?
It's true. He does the mustache twirl when he's sitting in the chair and he's just like thinking about it. That's a good one. And there's really not a lot that has to be explained with that. It's just,
everyone
especially
knows the Kenobi caress.
The Kenobi caress. It's a move. That's how he gets the ladies. I bet Satine was all into that Kenobi caress.
Yes.
Wow. Did he have a beard at that age?
He was trying. There was something going on there.
He's like the Chuck Norris of Jedi.
That's right.
Bearded at age of 9.
Bearded from the beginning. All right. And so Laura, number 6, and I think these kind of tie in because it's kind of this general, the general Obi-Wan motif. We have Obi-Wan Sass during the Clone Wars.
That's what I think he brought to the animated series for the most part. And I really enjoyed it. Was just like overall sass, sarcasm, silliness. And I just fully appreciated that about him. Having just like worked my way through all of the Star Wars films in-depth detail for the Schmodown. That unfortunately does include the animated Star Wars, the animated film, The Clone Wars, that came out in 2008. And so I've watched that movie quite a bit. And he just has like great lines in that when he like is dueling with Asajj Ventress and he's like, you'll have to do better than that, my darling. I'm just like, it's just like so over the top and ridiculous. But yeah, and I love that carried through the show. It just was a little thing I appreciated every now and then.
I think it's fantastic. And it's so on brand and they do such a good job. And whether it was intentional or not, like the carryover to like Attack of the Clones when they're chasing, what's her name into the bar and he tells Anakin to go find her and he's like, what are you gonna do? He's like, I'm going to the bar to have a drink. What do you think I'm doing? Like, you've got stuff to do. I'm going to have a drink. Like, that's the Obi-Wan that I'm here for.
Love it.
Excellent. Well, we have number 5. And again, there's so many great prequel things in this list. And that makes me really happy because of course, the grand total of old Obi-Wan is not that much. And so we get this character fleshed out, not only through animated shows and that kind of stuff, but through the prequels. And so Alyce has at number 5, Phantom Menace spread eagle kicks.
He does this move that just cracks me up
every time.
And the Phantom Menace, where there's always 2 people next to him and he's holding his lightsaber and then just jumps and goes poop. He doesn't jump very high. Nope. He's not like a martial artist by any means, but it happens at least twice where he's just like, boop, and it's so funny.
And it's done in such a way that like, in your heart, it wasn't intentional, but it has to feel on a tiny level. Like there's a joke here that they're hoping we don't catch on to, but like it's super like it catches you off guard. Like they're fighting in this, and you're like, wait, did he just do a kick with both feet?
Is he on a trampoline there?
Is there a unicycle? Like, what's actually going on?
Yeah. It's his move.
That was a fantastic one. And if we can go from the ridiculous to the sublime or vice versa, we have Laura's number 5, which was Revenge of the Sith. You are my brother, Anakin. And that's a powerful moment. And it is, I listened to something that you guys talked about. It may have been actually on Around the Galaxy when y'all were on a couple years ago. And this line came up and you talked about the emotion of watching it, and like, you know, for as ridiculous as the prequels can be, like there are those moments, and we talk all the time about the relationship of Obi-Wan and Anakin versus Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, you know, and the differences, a dad versus a son. And so, you know, I love that you put this in there, and this is going to show up again in a minute, spoiler alert. But tell me about, you know, why this one for you stood out. I'm sure I said most of it, but you know, you picked this list. What was that for you with this one?
You know, every once in a while, like the emotional moments of Star Wars really are what like win it for me. And that's, I think, why Rebels, I connected with it so much, because it's such like an emotional ending in that show. And so this was one of those moments that like I probably didn't connect with it much the first time I watched all of the prequels all the way through. But then like after watching the Clone Wars, in seeing all of that history play out in like in you know, such a more detailed way, especially between Anakin and Obi-Wan, I think this like all of Order 66, but especially this moment in particular really stood out for me as like a top Obi-Wan moment. It was just so emotional.
Absolutely. And I love, you know, for as much, you know, the prequels have been through their ups and downs. They've taken beatings. They've gotten lots of praise. I think they get more praise as time goes on, which I'm totally in favor of. I joke. Yeah, absolutely. Ken Knapsack is the one that coined the phrase a prequel apologist. And I feel like I fall into that category. They came out when I was in college. I kind of crapped all over them. I was that guy for a minute. It was like, I don't recognize those. That's not really Star Wars. Again, not burning couches, not trying to tear something down, but I was just like, I didn't like that. But as more Star Wars comes along, I know I'm wrong about that. And like, there's so many things in those movies and the fleshing out of that lore. And, you know, especially Ewan McGregor's Obi-Wan, like that's my favorite part of the prequels, you know, without a question. Alyce, you had something as I was talking about crapping on the prequels.
I love the prequels. The children I used to babysit in high school made me watch Attack of the Clones every time I went over. So it was at least a dozen times. And I think prequel apologist, I like to put a more positive spin on it and say prequel enthusiast. I
like that. Actually, and I got the quote wrong. I should clarify. I just realized as you were talking, he calls himself a reformed prequelist, not a prequel apologist. A reformed prequelist. That's it.
There
and
that's
that.
I like that.
Yeah, that fits in the category better. So my apologies to Ken Knapsack, who doesn't know who I am. All of that to say, that's such a powerful moment. And what you said, Laura, really sticks with me is the emotional moments in Star Wars. There may not be tons of them if you compare it to like the action scenes or the silly things or, you know, the starfighters or whatever. But when they do them, like most of them hit really hard and they're really good. I could do a whole separate show about that. Yeah, they definitely land. Okay. So number 4, Alyce is on a jumping kick right now. So we're going to keep going. Pun not intended. Alyce has the Attack of the Clones jump out of Padme's apartment.
Yeah. You know, he's just like, Anakin, stay here. I'm going to be the one to protect Padme. And then just jumps and kind of, you know, free falls. It was surprising. Holding on to that whole scene is great. You know, especially when you see the behind the scenes with like the blue screen in the background and they're just
sitting in the speeder pretending like they're driving.
Yeah.
The whole thing.
That was a fun chase scene. The score right there is really fun, you know, and we got to see a lot of Coruscant too that we hadn't seen really much of prior to that.
Yeah, it's for me, the part of Obi-Wan that I connect with in that is that I feel like that's when the Obi-Wan male lizard brain took over. because he was like, something's happening and there's no time to think about it. I'm jumping out the window. Like, it wasn't time to weigh our options and figure out what should we do. He just went. We have those moments here. If there's a loud noise on our street, the first thing I do is get up out of bed and I go walk out the front door, and my wife's like, where are you going? Call the cops. Like, you shouldn't just walk out there. I'm like, but something happened. I should walk out there and see what it is. Like, that's what Obi-Wan did. Obi-Wan is every dude that hears a noise outside at 1 o'clock in the morning and went, I need to go check that out. He just went for it. There wasn't time to weigh the options and the pros and cons. He just went, and then Anakin chased him down, and he had to pick a speeder in the right color, and the whole deal. So it's a fantastic scene, and I do like that about Obi-Wan, because the picture that we get of Obi-Wan a lot of times is, he's fairly reserved, but then, like you said, he's sassy, and he surprises us in those moments where we're like, wait, but he'll still spring to action. He'll still do what needs to be done, but then the rest of the time he's going to go to the bar and have that drink.
Exactly.
All right. So Laura's number 4, as we keep going, is probably my favorite out of all of this. The Rebels duel with Maul. Please talk about
1?
this, because I feel like we could write an entire essay about this one, but I want you to talk about it.
Alyce and I, funny enough, have done an entire essay on it. We talked about this with Blue Bantha Milk Company a while back, where literally it was just like pretty much this entire episode of Rebels. But this is one of those episodes that it didn't really land for me the first time that I watched it. I remember like not getting to watch it live. I had some other commitment that night and came home and watched it later. And of course, like, had it spoiled for me on Twitter on my way home, which is so predictable. But I remember sitting and watching it and like thinking that there was something wrong with the video, because I was like, wait a minute, like, is that it? Like, that's all there is to this duel? Just the boop, boop, boop and done? Like, it just seemed crazy. But kind of having spent a little bit more time mulling over it, pun intended, and like kind of giving it some further thought, watching it over again and sort of hearing some of the explanation behind why they did what they did and how they did it, it lands a lot better for me now. It's aged really well, I think, for me. So I love that, they talk about how, we've seen a lot of lightsaber duels in Star Wars. We've seen, epic ones in the Clone Wars, because you can do so much more in animation than you can even in live action. We've seen amazing lightsaber duels in the prequels and in the live action prequels, and then even in the sequels, we got some good ones too. But what we haven't seen a lot of is like this brevity to a lightsaber duel. So this was something really, truly different that we hadn't encountered before. And it was just really beautiful. The whole scene where he's holding him as Maul is dying, and they're having this little conversation. And like, now anytime that I ever see that in media, it always makes me think back to this Maul and Obi-Wan deal. Like I think it's like the end of, it might be like House of Cards, where there's like a sort of similar, where somebody's like holding their enemy because something violent had just happened. Like, it might be the final episode where I remember thinking like, oh my God, look at that. It's like Maul and Obi-Wan. And then we see it in Solo with Han and Beckett. So it was one of those things that it kind of keeps coming back to me. It keeps coming back to this moment for me. And it just kind of, it reinforces it every time, like how cool this scene is.
Absolutely. And we hear the cliche from George Lucas over the years is that it's poetry. Star Wars is poetry. It rhymes. It comes back. And as you were talking about that, something that occurred to me is exactly what you said about the lightsaber duels. We've had these big, drawn out Phantom Menace, Maul, Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon, 3 levels, no rails anywhere, all that kind of stuff. But then to me, this one echoes what we get in Star Wars in 1977 when Obi-Wan faces off with Darth Vader on the Death Star. Like, it's short, but he makes an intentional decision. Of course, in that point, he shuts his saber down, he sacrifices, but like, it wasn't a big drawn out battle. It wasn't something huge and intense. And it's almost like Obi-Wan, as we're talking about the character and the content of who Obi-Wan is, like, there's an efficiency to everything he does. And so that fight with Maul is very efficient. Like you said, I felt the same way. I was like, that's it. Like, it's not going to be this big, fantastic, drawn out, whatever. It's like the end of The Sopranos. Like, that's it. It's just over. But it was, I think it's 3 or 4 hits, isn't it? With the lightsaber, it's, quick, quick, quick. And then he's just done. Yeah. And that's Obi-Wan. Like, that's Obi-Wan as a person. Like, we're not going to waste energy. We don't have to be fancy. Let's just get to the point and move on. And so he does that. And then he has that again on the Death Star when he faces Vader. It's not a big drawn out, fancy thing. It gets to the point and does what he needs to do. And so I like the echo. And like I said, to bring back George's favorite cliche, it's poetry, it rhymes in some visual way.
Exactly.
So number 3 for Alyce, we have Attack of the Clone, the Jango fight on Kamino with the chase added in. And we all know what the most important part of that chase is, but Alyce, you got to break this one down for us.
That noise. That fight is awesome. I love Kamino. I think it's so interesting, and especially how much we see of it in the Clone Wars. But, I just think it's a really fun scene. There's so much crazy stuff going on. We see a lot of, I don't normally like space battles and flying around and stuff, but this part I did mostly because of the seismic charge. But yeah, it's just it's a really solid fight scene.
It really is a good fight scene. And I think, and it's funny that you said the kids you babysat made you watch Attack of the Clones every time you were over there. My daughter Harper, who's 12 and the one that loves Star Wars the most, when we're watching a movie or she was playing Battlefront 2 the other week, and she was like, I want to go to the rainy planet. It's the rainy planet. That's what Kamino is. That's what she wants to do. And she recognizes too, it's cool. There's water, there's, these, you get inside, it looks like an Apple store. It's just a wild, whatever it is. And you get these tall, weird aliens that work in the Apple store. They're what are the Genius Bar guys? But it is. And we got, the seismic charge is its own thing. How did y'all react when you got the seismic charge in The Mandalorian? Was it everything? I mean, you didn't know to expect it, so you couldn't say, was it what you hoped for? But
yeah, I was like, no, that's not what this is going to be. That no.
And there it was.
So happy. I just burst out laughing because I was so happy.
Oh, and did you have that moment that I think we all had to have had where you're like, I mean, he did it, but it sounds different. And then it clicked. You're like, but he was in atmosphere. He wasn't in space. And so it sounded a little bit different than the one that happened, in Attack of the Clones.
Yeah, to me, tomato, close enough. A for
Fair
effort,
enough.
And I was just stoked. I mean, I burst out laughing. I probably was on a processing delay of a second or two, but yeah, that was
well.
awesome.
And if I remember correctly, are y'all are like I am, which you were never super impressed with Boba Fett until Mandalorian came along, and then all of a sudden we're like, okay, turns out I like this guy. Even original trilogy people feel that way. So you're not alone. But I was just like, yeah, great. He's got a cool helmet, but I don't care. And then when I was like, okay, so this is why he has that reputation, because before that, Han Solo bumped into him and he died. That was all we had for it.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, we stand Boba now.
Yeah, totally warranted. All right, so number 3 for Laura. God, and this is so good. And this gets into those emotional moments too. Rise of Skywalker. These are your final steps, Rey. Rise and take them.
It's just so good. It was one of those things where the George Lucas, it's poetry, it rhymes thing is just for me, it's a little bit overdone to the point where I'm just I kind of roll my eyes a little bit every time it happens. I'm
we all
okay,
get it.
We get it. All right, it runs, it's fine. But this is one of those moments that I really loved because we had Obi-Wan in The Force Awakens, saying these are your first steps.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that he's the first person to speak in this Voices of Jedi Past scene, I thought was really poetic. And I thought it worked really well. I loved getting to hear Ewan in this scene. And I just, that opening line for that scene in particular, I just thought was so great. The whole scene was amazing, especially I love that Kanan got a little shout out in there. But the kicking it off with Obi-Wan, I thought was just perfect.
Excuse me. Yeah, it really is so good. And like we've said, a couple times, right? This is one of those good Star Wars emotional moments, one of those things that just hits. And especially, when I saw it in the theater the first time, I'm sitting there listening and going, wait, who was that? You had to process, which one was it? Did I hear? Wait, was that Hera? I mean, not Hera. Was that Ahsoka? Was that, who am I hearing? and then you watch it a second time, and then you're still not quite sure, and then somebody finally breaks it down. You're like, this line is so and so. This, and they're like, oh, and it adds up and it clicks, and then it adds more weight to it, and it feels more powerful. But I agree with you. I think that, the first steps, final steps, connection between Force Awakens and this is so cool, and it just is one of those things that it makes me happy. Like, I don't have to dig deep into it. I just like it.
Exactly.
What about okay, here we go. Number 2 for Alyce.
Here we go. You're
Here
my
it is.
brother, Anakin. I
You're
love
my
you.
brother, Anakin.
I think that scene is some of the best acting in Star Wars. It's so emotional, like it's believable. It's heart-wrenching.
You're absolutely right. And I thought about it when we talked about this a minute ago for Laura. Saying, being a reformed prequelist, being somebody who, even at the time when the prequels were coming out, I was in college, I saw these movies, and for whatever it was that I didn't like about them, the thing that I loved was Ewan McGregor. Like, I really liked his Obi-Wan. Like, I wanted to see more of that even then. And now we're going to get it, and I don't know what to do with myself. Like, I'm so excited. But you're exactly right. Like, the acting of it, like, I can see that scene in my head. His hair's blowing. He's upset. Like, he's crying. Like, it was a very emotional scene. And what I didn't put on either one of the quotes for the banner when I put it in for y'all, that I think you both put when you sent the message to me ahead of time, is, "You were my brother, Anakin," but the other half of that was, "and I loved you." And the power of that too. And, it's a brother story with the two of them. With Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, it was father-son. But with these two, like, they went through stuff, and we get that fleshed out in Clone Wars. And we get that, the big brother, little brother, I love. And especially, like I said, because of the way I connected with Clone Wars in this most recent last season, the first, those last 4 episodes when we have Anakin and Obi-Wan, and they're on that bridge, and they're going after the tactical droid, and they're hiding behind the thing, and Anakin's like, "I got it. I'll see you. I'll be there in a minute." Like, he does what Obi-Wan did when he jumped out the window and, attacked the thing. But it's that, like, oh, here goes my younger brother again. That relationship to me is so fun, and I'm so intrigued to see what will they do with this show. Is there going to be a flashback to the two of them, because we know Hayden's going to be in it? I don't know if they can do a flashback to, like, Clone Wars era, the two of them before he turns, but I don't care, because I want to see any of it. Like, give me what they got. The biggest thing I want is I want to see Ewan in the General Kenobi armor with that white shoulder thing, and, like, that's all I want. Give me that. The rest of it'll be, just icing on the cake.
Yeah,
I would also love to see that.
Yeah, I just think, that relationship, the more I think about it, and as I reflect not only on those movies, but Clone Wars, just seeing what comes out of that really helps to cement both of their legacies. Anakin, and what, the burden that Ahsoka carries for Anakin, and, the grieving the loss of that relationship, and what we see. The other thing I want to see more than anything else is I want to see at some point where where Luke tells Ahsoka, "Hey, he turned back at the end." Like, I need a little button on, Mandalorian Luke and Mandalorian Ahsoka somehow have 5 more minutes where he can tell her, "Look, he turned back to the light side at the end." Like, I need that conversation to happen. So number 2 for Laura, another happy landing.
Oh, I do love this moment. It's one of those things where, so one of the other things that Alyce and I bonded over when we, like, literally the first night that we met was comparing Star Wars podcasts that we listened to and talking about the prequel memes subreddit. And this is one of those that comes up a lot in prequel memes, I think. And anytime I see it, it just makes me smile, because it's just a great line in the prequels. I love that whole scene where they're crashing the invisible hand and the fire ships are coming in, and, like, to just get Obi-Wan, like, rubbing his hair and, like, seeming weirdly calm while they're crash landing a ship on a too short runway on Coruscant. It's just a great scene all around. But that line really is what lands that whole scene for me, I think.
Oh, is that another attempt at a pun, Laura?
It was, yes.
It was. and it also landed.
You're on a roll tonight. There you go.
Right. You've got this.
Sunday pun day. Better than a Monday.
Sunday pun. Oh man, that's right. We're getting into dad joke territory. So you're moving more into my lane. So we've made our way. We've gone from 7 to 2. These have been some fantastic, moments with Obi-Wan, things that we have. I don't know how much communication took place between the two of you as you put your lists together. Alyce is showing me 0 right now, which makes this even better because, and I went ahead and just combined it into one banner just a second. Laura and Alyce both have the same number 1. Revenge of the Sith, hello there, is the list that is the number 1 that we both had. So, I mean, by all means, talk about why this is your number 1.
Prequel memes.
It's just classic. Everyone knows what it is. Every time I meet someone from work, I work from home. Like real life will be work from home too once the pandemic ends. But I Slack everyone when I first meet them to introduce myself. I start with hello there. And I know one day someone is going to say General Kenobi back at me, but it's perfect.
It is. And it's, like you said, the memes, this may be the dividing line in the sand, the GIF or GIF, depending on where we land on that conversation. I use that one a lot where it's just, blank space, that head pops up, he turns. I have on Friday nights over the last, especially during pandemic, the Beyond the Blast Doors Network folks, they do Force Connect on Friday nights, their little call-in show. And, it's basically what I call drinking Star Wars. You have a drink, you come talk and act silly and whatever. And I've done that a bunch of weeks because, as I've said, it's the bar that I haven't been able to go to over the last 11 months. And it's the chance to have drinks and hang out and talk Star Wars. And one of the weeks coming up soon, that's how I'm going to come on camera. When it's my turn to come on, I'm just going to duck down and I'm going to pop up. I just haven't gotten brave. I haven't gotten brave enough to perfect my Ewan hello there. So I haven't gotten there yet.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah,
but that's solid. It feels like a good way to enter, for people that would appreciate it. But what about you, Laura? You picked this as your number 1 moment as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those, like we use it on our show, and it's like it's one of those scenes where every single time I watch Revenge of the Sith, it makes me laugh every time. It will never not make me laugh because it's just delightful, and it just instantly makes me think of like all of the like silliness of the prequel meme subreddit, and it just makes me happy. It's just awesome. It's so random. Like, I mean, when you like sit down and you break down that scene where he says that, it's just like, that's the first thing you're gonna. Wow. Okay. Like it's just so ridiculous and over the top, but I love it.
Well, and I wonder, and y'all would know this because you're both much smarter than I am and you've studied all these things, but like, of course, we have in what I call Star Wars, A New Hope, we have Obi-Wan when he goes, he sees the droids, Luke's passed out, and he takes that hood off and he says, hello there. And he does his whole thing. But like, when we got to prequels time and we got to Ewan playing Obi-Wan Kenobi, like, did George Lucas go, hey, you need to do this because it's going to tie you and help people understand you're the same guy? Or did Ewan McGregor do it because he went back and watched Star Wars and went, I need to try and figure out how to be like, I really want to know, like, I probably want to know more about the decision process for those 2 words than is necessary for a human being.
I think it's pretty simple. So a lot of things are reused all over the place, like pieces of phrases, numbers, they're just all over the place. And I think what probably just happened is the thought of, oh, I've used this before, this is good. Like not a thought behind it, just like, oh, this was a good idea, I think I'll keep it.
It worked. They went with it. So, and that's the thing. We have the Obi-Wan Kenobi show coming our way. I mean, if there's nothing else that happens in that show, if we don't get a hello there, we may actually burn something down. Like, I don't know how you have that show and not get a hello there. I'm not one to be angry about. I'm not one to be anything angry about Star Wars, but that might be the line. I'm just saying.
It all happens.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that clearly has to be something that's going to happen, and we're all going to lose our mind when it does. Well, ladies, those were fantastic lists. I love, the moments that you picked. I loved, that we mixed in animated, we mixed in, the prequels a lot. And that's something that, again, I have a bigger appreciation for the prequels than I did when they came out. And I hope that it continues that way. I talk sometimes about, we've said it tonight, the different ways into Star Wars, whether it's through animation, whether it's through the prequels. I remember when I first introduced my girls to the prequels versus the original trilogy, like they responded to the prequels because they were brighter and more colorful. And, it had I don't want to say juvenile feel to it, but like they responded to Jar Jar. He's funny. He is funny. Like, let's be honest. He's funny. There's fart jokes in Star Wars because that's what, happens. But it's one of those things that as we go along, you see the connections to it. And I think that we talked about this too. The books help flesh out so much more of that, to be able to have a master and apprentice book, to be able to have, the continuations of these stories that we love, that we're into it. Not everybody's like we are about Star Wars. Most of them are like, yeah, great. Star Wars. Cool. Oh, that's that space thing that you like. That's what my wife says to me. You're space friends. But we get to see that. And especially with somebody like Obi-Wan, there's so much depth to that character. There's so many things that either we have seen, of course, all the things that we're anticipating and want to see, coming up in that show. Let me ask you, I'll give you each this question, and I didn't plan this ahead of time, so I'm dropping it on you. What is your one, besides a hello there, what is each of your number one hope in the Kenobi series that we're going to get? What do you want most out of that, Alyce?
I guess some 3D magical effect where he can hop out the screen and make out with me.
Totally fair. I mean, you could get like an Oculus, maybe one of these virtual reality 3D things. There's got to be a way we could figure out how to make that happen.
No, I'd be fine with them pulling a lot from the Kenobi Legends book, actually. Mm-hmm. I really enjoyed it, and especially the scene where he's going to deliver baby Luke. Or no, that's not right. No, maybe it is. And he's at a bar and he sees that Vader is alive and some sort of hologram thing, and just goes ape shit and pulls his lightsaber out and like cuts shit down. And sorry, am I supposed to say that?
You're fine.
And like
we speak French here too.
Stuff. Parfait. Yeah, I really, really like that scene in the beginning of the novel, or whatever point the novel it is. So I'd like to see him knowing Vader's still alive. Absolutely.
Laura, what about you? What do you want to see in the Kenobi show? What's your big wish or want?
I want him to go off planet. I don't want him to stay on Tatooine the entire time, because that just sounds exhausting and monotonous, and I don't care for it. So I'm just hoping that they find some excuse to take him off planet for some reason. I don't see why they couldn't. It seems pretty reasonable to me. So
absolutely.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, and I agree with you on that. And there's a great interview. Shout out to Brandon from Talking Bay 94. He had Timothy Zahn on an episode a year or so ago, and he talked to him, and he asked Timothy Zahn, he was like, what are some other Star Wars stories you wish you could write or would like to write? And one of the two that he said, the first one he said he wanted to write a story where Boba had to get back to Jabba with Han Solo and had to deal with all the people trying to intersect him and cut him off and steal Han from him. Like, that could be a great movie or a story or whatever. But the other one that I really loved was, he said he wanted to write a story where Obi-Wan went to the far side of the galaxy and basically made a big ruckus in order to fake his death so that he could then sneak back to Tatooine to hide out. And so this idea of like Obi-Wan intentionally going, like you said, off planet somewhere else and kind of causing a scene and creating a way for the general population, whoever, to think he's dead and gone, so that then he could sneak back to Tatooine and hide out and watch over Luke. Like, I love the idea of what that could have been. You know, there's a part of me that thought that would have worked for this TV show, like him going on some adventures, getting sidetracked somewhere, because as we've seen in 2 seasons of The Mandalorian, you're going to get sidetracked. The next episode isn't going to the next spot. We're going to go get fuel, go get repairs, go get, you know, whatever it is. And so I like the idea, and the fact that Timothy Zahn said it, I went, okay, well, we should totally do that. Like, he's justified because he's Timothy Zahn. But yeah, I would love to see, I want to see Obi-Wan go off planet. I want him to have the opportunity to be, I want that sassy Obi-Wan. I want that, hey, I'll be at the bar having a drink, playing it cool, while I still know what's going on, and I know everybody in the room, and I can take care of myself if I need to. Like, I want boss Obi-Wan. That's what I want. I want him to be, you know, kind of peak Obi-Wan, in control. But I think the idea of spending, is it 6 episodes? Do we know yet? Has it been confirmed? Is it 6? 6 on Tatooine feels harsh. It feels like a little bit more of...
That's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot of Tatooine. We already get a lot of Tatooine. So, you know, I agree with you. I think that's a good way to go. I don't want to make out with you and like you do, Alyce, but I like your ideas anyhow. So I want that for you.
Thank you. I want that for me too.
That's right. I'm here for you. That's what I'm trying to do. Well, ladies, this has been so much fun. I really do appreciate y'all taking time on a Sunday night to hang out with us. Please tell our listeners where they can find you. And also, do y'all have, I don't know what y'all have coming up next for the show. If y'all have anything you want to plug, if you want to plug trivia, the moment is yours. I've got your Twitter handles on the screen, but what do y'all have coming up?
I'm trying to think. We don't really have anything on the books right now besides, like, you know, just our general silly nonsense. But if you want to follow our show, that is down at that direction, ForceToast Pod. You can find a link to our website there and all the places you can find our show. The theme is basically that Alyce and I drink wine and we talk about Star Wars. We'll talk about the news, we'll recap whatever new book is out, and then we generally do a little bit of trivia. And then if you want to find me on Twitter, I am @shutup_Laura. I'm at that handle on Instagram too. And then I host a show over on John Roca's channel called The Jedi Way, where he and John and I just talk about some sort of big picture theme idea every episode. And that's every other Wednesday. ForceToast comes out every other Tuesday. And I'll be competing against Alex Damon or Andrew DeMolanta at some point in the movie Trivia Schmodown in the Star Wars division. So stay tuned for that.
Absolutely.
I'm excited for that. Yes.
We're all excited about it. And I will say that those of us at Podcast of the Wills are firmly in Team Laura Kelly's corner. So we will cheer you on no matter what. We want you to bring home the title, show Alex Damon who's boss, you know, all that kind of stuff.
Hell yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank y'all so much for being here again. To all of our listeners, we thank y'all for joining us. For those of you in the live chat, thanks for hanging out tonight. We always appreciate your comments. I will apologize to the live chat. Usually I try to do a better job of getting comments up on the screen, but I had 2 lists going at the same time, and I've still not gotten really good at this whole online show producing thing while trying to talk and drink. So I'm doing the best I can, but we do recognize that you're here. We appreciate you. We love you guys. Thanks for hanging out. You can follow us on Twitter @WillsPod, and we would also love it if you went to our YouTube page, followed us, hit the bell so that when we come on, you know that we're coming on. And in the meantime, may the Force be with you.